I'm Rich Harwood. Glad you could spend the next 40 minutes with us. Really glad to have you here. Happy New Year, and I hope your New Year is getting off to a good start. Today, we just um, want to talk with you a little bit about where we are with this campaign for the new Civic Path. We'd love to get your advice on how to move forward, and we want to talk about some next steps that we know are already taking place. Just to set this up, I think as we start this new year, I often say this, regardless of who you vote for, regardless of which policies you support, um, I think for a lot of Americans today, there is a sense of negativity hanging over the country. We're seeing debates over ICE and what's happening in different communities. In Jackson, Mississippi, just a few days ago, a synagogue there, Beth Israel, was burned, set afire. I've been there. I've worked in Jackson, Mississippi. I know folks who go to that congregation. We're seeing continued cuts in important services that, whether we can have debates over the role of the federal government, which we should. And at the same time, there are threatened cuts to childcare, to food security, to education, to other issues that, as I travel across the country, to Medicare and Medicaid, we're seeing real effects in communities. And so this negativity, I think, as we enter this new year, is on the minds of a lot of us. At the same time, I just saw someone from Reidsville, North Carolina, join the call. I was in Rockingham, North Carolina, a few weeks ago before the new year and before the holidays. And Rockingham in North Carolina was once a community that was burgeoning, was very healthy economically and in other ways, and has in the last decade or two or three has fallen on hard times. And yet, what I found in Rockingham, which I find all across the country, was a real desire, a real hunger to find a new path forward, to figure out a way for us to come together and get on a new civic path. And as I said, I find this hunger wherever I go, whether I can see Cheryl Wilder from Alamance County, North Carolina, I can see Pastor Steve from Reading, Pennsylvania, whether we're doing work in Ohio and Jim Jordan's congressional district. Wherever we go, we're finding this hunger, and I found it last year during this campaign for the new civic path. As the new year began, at the Institute, we faced a choice. Do we continue with this campaign in 2026 or do we end it? Did it serve its purpose? And as you know, the midterm elections are coming up, and lots of folks are saying, look, if we just elect the right people, if we just elect my candidate, whomever that may be, all will be good in the country. All will be good in the country. I'm sure you've heard those arguments. And yet, as I travel across the country, there was a momentum to this campaign that we found because people were looking for an apolitical message from apolitical messengers. Not more politics as usual, not more debates over the midterms, as important as they may be to many of us, but an apolitical message from apolitical messengers. And I happen to believe, and I suspect many of you on this call believe, that there's a momentum in the country amid the negativity that's happening. There are so many good things happening throughout the country in local communities. And so the choice that we've made is to continue this campaign. Now is not the time to surrender. Now is not the time to step back. Now is not the time to give in to despair and to negativity. I think now is the time to double down on the momentum that we've found in this campaign, a desire for an apolitical message from apolitical messengers, a desire to build on the good things that are happening in the country, all across the country, in blue areas, in red areas, in areas that have given up on politics, in areas that are arguing over politics. But the fact is that we're finding people coming together across dividing lines to create change in our local communities. And I think now is not the time to surrender because, as we all know, we're celebrating this year the 250th anniversary of the founding of this country. And I think, yes, we should reflect on the history of the country. There's no question about that. But I think the 250th is beckoning us to take action, to renew, or as James Baldwin says, to begin again in creating and recreating our country to move forward, not simply to look back, but to look ahead and figure out who is it that we are today and who is it that we seek to become, and how can we make this nation a more perfect union in the years ahead, not just for some of us, but for all of us. And at the Institute, I think, as you know, all means all. No one gets left out, no one gets left behind. And so I think the challenge that we're facing and the reason why we want to continue this campaign is, yes, we need to figure out where we're going politically in this country, no question about it. But I think the challenge we face, and I know many of you feel this way, is deeper than just politics. We face a human challenge in the country, a challenge about our very culture in the country that I think strikes at, do we hold the belief and how can we restore our belief in ourselves and in one another that we can actually come together and get things done, not as Republicans, not as Democrats, not as independents, not as disaffected voters, but as Americans, as human beings, as folks who have their feet on the ground here, who want to ensure that not just some of us, but all of us thrive moving forward. And that means all communities as well, not just some communities. And so the new Civic Path, the campaign for the new Civic Path is going to continue. We're doubling down on this. And I say that knowing that the Institute itself, much like all of you in your work, much like all the communities that we work with across the country, we're facing our own headwinds right now. But I don't think now is the time to hunker down. I don't think now is the time to retreat. I certainly don't think now is the time to surrender. I think now is the time to double down on the good things that are happening in the country, to build on the momentum we know is taking place, and to grow it, and to spread it, and to bring more folks into the circle who believe that we can do better and we can be better as individuals, in our communities, and as a nation. And so that's the work that we're committing ourselves today to doing moving forward. So I know, I hope that you all share that sense of hope that we can move forward together. We need your help in doing this. This isn't our campaign. This is a campaign about how communities in the country can move forward. And as you know, we believe that this work needs to start in our local communities. It's not going to come from Washington, D.C., that's clear. And in many of the states where you live, it's not likely to come from our state governments either. Our state capitals are some of the hottest beds of culture wars in the country right now. I think it's got to come from our local communities where people have had it with politics as usual and where they want to turn outward toward one another, figure out how we can come together, focus on our shared aspirations, build together, and get on this new civic path. So what I'd like to do is to actually open it up for a conversation and really ask you, what do you want to see from this campaign for the new civic path over this next year? What do you think the country needs? What will give you a lift to see and hear as this moves forward? What do you think is important for us to be focused on as we move forward? So would love to open it up. Let me just remind you, we're committed to an apolitical message from apolitical messengers. And we think that's what gives us sort of the ability for this campaign to continue to gain momentum. So I'd love to hear thoughts about where you think we should head with this and what you would like to see us do in the next year. Yeah, Miriam.
Hello, everyone. So I'm at a community foundation in Eastern Connecticut. So something that, as you were speaking, Rich, I thought about is clearly there is a war on the poor. the cutting of benefits and what's happening even in one of the richest states in the union, Connecticut, we can see what a huge impact this is going to have. So I think it would be really smart to start building a movement of people. You know, when you talk to some people about democracy, they really don't understand what you're talking about. But if you talk about basic human rights, that there's a different sense of that. That is not seen as, oh, you're being political. It's basic human rights that we are all entitled to based on being born a human being. So we can talk a little bit about and educate and advocate around basic human rights, and then that gets tied into building civil society, which I think we and all communities around the world need to be doing to ultimately hold governments accountable.
Yeah, thanks for that thought. And I couldn't agree more. I think in the last year, where we found deep resonance in the campaign was when we talked about the need to recommit ourselves, for instance, to dignity for all people. And that dignity, that all means all here, that we need to recommit ourselves to a sense of belonging and acceptance, that there is a mutual reciprocity that's really critical to moving forward. And what I found, the more we were on the road and lifted up these central ideas that you're talking about, is the more people stepped forward and said yes. And that's why I think I began by saying, this is not a political debate, really. This is a human and cultural challenge that we face. And I think, how do we restore our sense that we have a shared humanity, and that sits on some very basic values that are really critical to moving forward. So we are committed to that, and we will continue to lift that up. And I think you're right. It's not, people don't relate to the discussion about democracy. They do relate to a discussion about our shared humanity and that we need each other and that we're meant to go together. So thanks for raising that. Yeah, Neil?
Thank you for organizing this, and thanks to ProHuman for recommending your book, which I read. I actually don't have a lot of solution. I do speak because of my book, and I would just raise two comments, looking for comments from you or anybody else. As I'm doing some speaking, I'm seeing most of the audience, and again, I'm hoping it changes. I'm looking for more conservative audience, and I'm not getting it. So that's comment one. It's not something, you know, I'm just observation for me. The second one is more to do with I'm encouraging people to have this kind of conversation. So I organized a meetup group last night, actually. I never even joined meetup group in my whole life. And some people joined, and there's two issues. One, of course, one particular lady from California was just angry. She was very angry, and I can understand her anger. And anger because of the division, and because of she's from minority community, and she felt that she has no space for unity, which was my dialogue of the conversation with unity does not require uniformity. So that was one pushback. And I didn't have a good answer. I'm just honestly telling you, I tried, and I tried to have that conversation. The second one was to do with economic condition. More so on my Zoom than my audience. A lot of them are struggling just to pay their bills.
Yeah.
And when I'm trying to have this conversation with that particular community, they're saying, I'm just worrying about paying my medical bills. How do you expect me to engage in my community to do something? Anyway, I will leave with those two thoughts with you, given your vast experience, because I'm trying to do in a much smaller way what you're doing. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, just two quick thoughts. Would love to talk to you more about this, and I'm sure we will through, I see Lori on the call, through the ProHuman Foundation, the great work you all are doing. It's interesting, Neil, we're getting as much, if not deeper, resonance in conservative areas in the country than progressive areas. And in fact, if you look at all the places I was invited to speak last year, I often say this, I decided not to say it at the beginning because it takes too long, but I'll say it now since you raised it. Um, when we began this campaign, I was invited to Matt Gaetz's congressional district to speak in Pensacola, Florida. I was invited to Jim Jordan's congressional district in Ohio. I was invited to Lauren Boebert's congressional district in Colorado. And on and on and on it went. I also spoke in Selma and in Flint and in Fresno, California, and other areas. But my point is this: I think the desire and the hunger among people does not divide at all by who we voted for. It knows no political dividing lines, because I think what people are yearning for is a sense of possibility and hope that we can get on a better trajectory in this country and figure out a way to come together and get things done. And so what I would say is, in order to engage more people, we need to go where they are. And that's what this campaign did in last year, and that's what we're going to do again. And what I would say is the reception we received in Matt Gaetz's district or Lauren Boebert's district or Jim Jordan's district was absolutely no different than in Flint or in Selma. You could have closed your eyes and you would have heard the same comments and the same reception. So
Very encouraging to hear. I read that in your book, but thanks for sharing that. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the thing about people paying their bills, what I would say is, yeah, not that you're suggesting this, but I think too many of the discussions right now, look, discussions about democracy are important. And if we want to move people to engage, if we want to bring people together across these dividing lines, if we want to see more progress in communities, then we're going to have to talk about what matters to people in their daily lives. And what I've found, and I mentioned this in the new Civic Path book, is that there is no shortage of things that people will come together and work on together. They will work on youth issues. They will work on senior care. They will work on health care. They will work on mental health. They will work on belonging and loneliness. And when I say people, I mean people from all walks of life, people who are struggling economically, people who are doing well, people who voted for the president, people who voted for other people. So long as we are focused on what really matters to people in their daily lives. And then here's the thing about democracy, which I believe deeply, is that when we work together on these things and build together, we are by definition strengthening our democracy. We are strengthening our ability to come together as Americans. We are strengthening our civic culture. And when we do that, community by community, we can strengthen the country. And the reason why I say that is not because I believe it or read it in a book. It's because our history tells us that much of the significant change in this country did not begin in our in DC or in our state capitals. It began in local communities and grew from there. And that is what I think we need to begin to do to strengthen our democracy as well. So, yeah, Cheryl?
So that makes me, I have two things I was thinking about. And one, obviously, I'm not with you when you have been speaking, so I don't know what kind of stories you tell all the time. But, what's been helpful for me through this time is reading the stories of the industrial workers and the walkouts, hundreds of years ago, getting their rights down from working 16-hour days, minimum wage. And how can we, so I think telling the stories of our democracy over time to remind people that it's been much worse. And it took the community, it took individuals who didn't have the time and who was always worrying about rent and food and working long hours, but they still, were able to do that collectively. So I think harnessing that kind of energy from our history and bringing it to the present could be powerful. I know it's been for me individually. That's how I've been kind of surviving this last little while, is by reading those histories and the success stories of our country. And then the other piece I think that I've been thinking a lot about that's important to talk about is the moral leadership, not just political leadership or policy, but morality. I think that's a topic that isn't forefront all the time. And so I think maybe adding some of that language into it and the importance of moral leadership alongside all the other kinds of leadership could be really helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. Couldn't agree with you more on both points. I think, as you know, one of the things that we've been talking about, I end all speeches by talking about the history of the country and all the different places where we have come together and sought to become a more perfect union, notwithstanding the real stains on the country's history. That's one part. I think the other part, which you've helped to do, and I see others here from Alamance, is that there are stories of communities together, like Alamance County, like the 2 counties in Ohio we're working with, I see Pastor Steve here from Reading, of people in this current environment that build on our history and demonstrate that we still have the capabilities to do this. We still can come together, notwithstanding our real differences, and produce change in our communities that can then move forward. And the last thing I'll say is I'm glad to hear you talk about moral leadership, because we just committed at the Institute, I'm writing a new book on the new moral vision. And I happen to believe, and this goes back to Neil's question, I do think that there is a new moral vision in the country that is emerging around a set of values that we all share, regardless of our political perspective, and that there are issues that we all can work on together, that we're ready to work on and are working on, and that there are ways that we can use this to rebalance ourselves for moving forward. So I couldn't agree with you more that this isn't simply about, I think you've heard me say this in the past, one of my frustrations is I think there are a lot of groups out there that just say, if you follow this process, if you use this tool, everything's going to be fine. And my concern with that approach is that they don't go deep enough into the types of things that you're talking about that I think really are at the core of the challenge that we face today. This is not simply about adopting some new techniques. This is about embracing both the good and bad parts of our history and deciding that we're going to be builders moving forward in a way that reflects the best of us and reflects some basic moral beliefs that we hold as a country. So thanks for raising that. Fred, go ahead.
Early, just before the holidays, I had the opportunity to host a book circle for the New Civic Path in a community not far from where I live. And we had a very diverse population and everyone was represented. And they really didn't know each other coming together. But it was so marvelous to sit and listen to the dialogue. When we very first started, they were all looking for the answer and the solution. And then in the end, they were coming up with projects they could do together and put something in the ground to move forward, which gave me a great sense of hope. And I think it gave them a great sense of hope that they could overcome those differences. And yesterday, of course, we celebrated your work in DeSoto County. We were back there in a community, the Turner Agricultural Center, and with loads of people filling it. And the room was just filled with all of the wonderful things that they have come together to do after working on the Harwood Institute for the few years that they've been working on it. And for me, I only drop into that community just when I can support them, but just to listen and to see the changes that have been brought through your work, through the Institute's work in that community, really gave me a great sense of hope that people came together around shared aspirations, and they have, like 7 different projects that they're working on in their community, and they're doing it. It's grassroots. It's coming from the bottom up. They feel empowered. They feel hopeful. And I wanted to say thank you.
Well, thanks. What does that all suggest to you about what we should be talking about moving forward?
that we should all try to work in our neighborhoods and our communities and get more people involved, just at the grassroots level of identifying what's important to them and how can we start together and build together.
Great. Thanks. I just wanted to say that we didn't create that background for you. So it was all generated locally. Someone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I'd like to say something now that I've heard the rest of you lead into what I think is almost a perfect segue into what I'd like to suggest,
Great.
which Rich ties into what you're all about, the civic path. Civic having to do with the responsibilities of citizenship. How can we be the best citizens? Well, we've heard this phrase, if it's to be, it's up to me, very common, and that's very true. So with all the political polarization, division, the enmity, the conflict, etc., it's so consumptive, but so damaging. We got to get away from that. So how do we do it? Well, we think there's a way to do that that's really very simple, and it's up to the individual. It has to do with moral leadership, if you will, from within. So who doesn't know the old original golden rule, which is pretty good?
Yeah.
Right? The classic Christian version, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Okay. That's pretty good. Our little team has taken that and elevated it to, let me just state what we call the two principal principles, because this ties into the moral and the civic path.
Yeah.
You need to say something, Rich?
No, go ahead. Just
okay.
Yeah.
So do for all others, both directly and indirectly, what you would want done for you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do to any others, either directly or indirectly, what you wouldn't want done to you. So see, now, if you look at it writ large, the old golden rule, and I'm not coming from a religious perspective, but it's in all the world's religions. So they're like 5 billion people aware of this. It is humanity's number one rule. If you ask, okay, what's common to all of us? What is the common bond? It's that one. So we've elevated it to a higher version, which is very personal.
Yeah. So is this something you think we should focus on moving forward?
Absolutely. Because it personalizes it. It lets each of us be powerful personally to do for and don't do to, to be ethical and be moral. And it gets us away from the division, the polarization, the arguing, the conflict. We don't have to look back to the grassroots.
Right.
I came in my community, and this is what we're, hoping people will see. Okay, let me be golden ruleistic in my own community, make it as good as it can be here. We create something good and positive that people say, whoa, that was pretty good. We like that. And then get away from all this other political stuff that doesn't help us much.
No, it doesn't help us much. And thanks for that comment. And thanks for sending me. I think you sent me some materials recently.
I did.
So thank you for that as well. It's interesting because one of the things that you're raising, which we find over and over again in all these different communities, whether it's DeSoto County or Alamance or wherever we're working, is that one of the keys to moving, and then I'm just going to invite someone else to have one more comment, and then we'll switch gears. I want to make sure I get you out of here on time. But one of the keys to all this is, so long as we insist on using a political frame to talk about issues in the country, we will be mired in traditional political debates and we will become gridlocked. People immediately, as we all know, take up their political positions, in part because there's a fight or flight kind of response that kicks in. And so to your point, to build on your point, one of the things that we find over and over again is if we can take these issues out of a political frame and place them more in a frame about what matters to people in their daily lives, we are much more likely to practice the golden rule. We are much more likely to have mutual reciprocity. We're much more likely to find enough common ground on things that we can actually move forward together and start to build together. So thanks for your comment. I really appreciate it. One
One quick thing, if I can add, please, just one
just
really quick
quickly, because I
thing.
want to pull someone else in. Yeah.
That word is the new word going forward, hopefully, the higher elevated word for the old golden rule, good in its day, not good enough now, is golden ruleism.
Right.
You go to Golden
Great.
Ruleism, there's a website that gives the little booklet free,
Great.
and two principles are there, so it's all free
Good.
for anybody anywhere. But that's the name of it.
Good. Go to the website. I've been there, and pull some stuff down.
Good.
All right. Other thoughts about what we should be focused on moving forward that you'd like?
Hey, Rich.
Yeah.
This is Pat Morris. I work for your old friend Daniela Levine Cava down in Miami.
Hey, no kidding.
Who's our county mayor for the
I
last
know.
4th, 5th year. And so she's up in Tallahassee, but asked me to be on this call. And we are working with the Florida Civic Advance and Bob Jones and Jim Murley, people on a civic summit in probably mid-June. And again, maybe it's an offline, but we've got the partners around the table. Everything you said about local, we're not Democrats, Republicans, we're people who are trying to move this county and this community forward and leaving our politics aside. But I would love to engage with you to look at, we've got a sense of where we're going to go, but I think there's probably a lot of learnings that you have that we can integrate into something that we know is going to happen in June already. And I'd love to do that. I know the mayor would love to know that you and I have reconnected after many, many years as well. So
yeah, it's great. It's great to see you. It's funny. I just keynoted the Goodwill International Conference. There was someone from Miami who also knows the mayor, and I was just. This is the type of thing I think we're trying to talk about across the country, which is, there are lots of folks who have been in our work who ultimately ended up running for office. Rob Barron is on the call, who's on our board. He just got elected to the Des Moines City Council. I keep saying it's going to be the next mayor.
Well, and you met Daniela when she was at Catalyst Miami many years ago.
I was going to say, so this is all leading to Daniela was one of the very first people who participated in our public innovator labs ever.
I remember.
In Baltimore, Maryland. So I would love to be in touch. Let's definitely do that. And it's great to see you, and it's great to hear Daniela's name again. So
and you've got Jane Gilbert and Sonia Ferrer on the call also, who are our Miami superstars as well. So
great, excellent. Hey Jane, hey Sonia. Good to see you both. Great. So let me just pivot real quickly to next steps. Actually, Pat, you just mentioned one, so that's great. But where we're headed with this and what we're committed to. So in 2026, particularly, as you know, we started the previous part of this campaign during the presidential race in 2024 because we thought, everyone said, don't start it then. We thought, no, actually, that's a great time to start it because we want to juxtapose a civic message, an expressly civic message, to political messages. And in 2026, we're continuing now, notwithstanding the midterms, we know they're going to heat up, but we want to again push forward with a civic message during a time when we know politics is going to get more acrimonious and divisive. So for 2026, we're committed to going back out on the road. Many of you know I spent most of last year on the road. We're committed to virtual events like this one and others, one I'm about to announce in a moment. We're committed to a whole series of events around the 250th and how the new civic path, Cheryl, this goes to your point, how the new civic path connects to our history and how our history connects to where we need to go moving forward. We're committed to continuing to produce videos and articles, and we're really committed to continuing to lift up stories, both historical stories about places where Americans have come together, and also stories like the folks in Alamance County and elsewhere in DeSoto County, Florida, and other places where together people are now creating the kind of change that we're talking about, that we don't have to wait for anyone. We don't need permission for this. We can do it, and people are doing it, and they're blazing their new paths forward. So we're committed to that moving forward. Immediate things that we're going to be doing that I'd like to invite you to do with us is Neil, you just mentioned you read the book. I just got an email from someone yesterday who did a book club that we didn't know about. Thank you, Neil, for reading it. We know in DeSoto, in Manatee County, in Sarasota, and Charlotte, they've been holding book clubs across 4 counties, which is really sort of the beacon that we point to of how this can happen. So we know people all across the country are doing this. We know more people, when they read the book, immediately get activated. It's not about reading the book, it's about getting activated. And so we want to hold a national book club where we have folks locally reading this book, where you just need 5 people, 10 people. We've got a discussion guide that we'll share with you that you can use. And then we want to bring everyone together on March 31st to have a conversation about what people learned from doing this together, what it made them think about, what it might have activated them to do, or they activate them to do moving forward. So you'll be hearing more about this, but we'd love for everyone on this call to activate local book clubs. And again, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can just be 5 people. And we've got a discussion guide that we know works because we've tested it time and again in different communities. So that's one thing. Second, Annette, I'm looking at you because I know your film, the film that you're in just came out and it's at the Sundance Film Festival. Congratulations on that. That's really wonderful and I can't wait to see it. The Institute produced a short documentary on Selma, Alabama, as an example of people's desire in Selma to get on a new civic path. As you know, in 1965, Selma was the place that crystallized for the country the desire to cross the bridge, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and pass the 1965 Voting Rights Act. We believe as a country we need to go back over the bridge. And so this short documentary is both about Selma, but really it's a metaphor for how, as a country, do we decide to go back over the bridge again today. And so it's just 15 minutes. It's also a great discussion starter. So we urge you to do that as well. As I said, we're going back on the road. If there's any way that we can come to your community, Pat, you mentioned Miami, would love to come to Miami and join with all of you and Jane and Sonia and the mayor. We're building out the campaign schedule for this year. We have a lot of things already scheduled, but we want to make sure we're going to different parts of the country and lift up not only the campaign, but in particular, the good things that are happening and people's hunger and desire to get on a new civic path. And then lastly, as you all know, because many of you have participated, but if there are people you know who want to become more equipped to get on this new civic path, we've got the Harwood School. We want to encourage people to take advantage of that, and we'll be announcing new ways for folks to do that. So in the last minute, I simply want to say this. Thank you to each of you for all the good work that I know that you're doing. I know so many of you on this call, and I know the good things that you're already doing, and thank you for all of that. Thank you for supporting the work of this campaign. We're very grateful for that. And I just want to say that the campaign for the New Civic Path is going to continue. We're going to double down on this. Our goal is not to make the Institute better known or even to sell books. It's really to activate more Americans and to say that we don't have to go it alone on our own. There are people all across the country doing this good work. It builds on the history of this country, and we know that we have unfinished work to do in this country. And during the 250th anniversary of this country, I can't think of a better thing to be doing than to say, let's create a more perfect union moving forward. And that we are meant to go together. We need each other, and we need to go together. So thanks for joining us. We'll be in touch. Join a book circle, create a book circle, join us on March 31st. And And we look forward to moving forward together. Thanks so much for being here.